Revenge? King under the mountain is dead, and where are his kin that dare seek revenge? Girion, Lord of Dale, is dead, and I have eaten his people like a wolf among sheep. And where are his sons' who dare approach me? I kill where I wish, and none dare resist. I laid low the warriors of old, and their like is not in the world today. Then I was but young and tender. Now I am old and strong, thief in the shadows. My armor is like 10-fold shields. My teeth are swords, my claws spears. The shock of my tail is a thunderbolt. My wings a hurricane, and my breath death.
Hello and welcome back to Dragon December here on the Arcane Forge. This is our final Dragon December. In fact, this is our final Monster Monday as well of 2019. So thank you so much for joining me in this festive period. For those of you that are just joining us for the first time, a Monster Monday is a type of video series that I do where I draw a creature from D&D and I talk about its lore and its history and what it's like to fight in-game as well. And this whole month I've been covering dragons of all different sorts and shapes and sizes that feature in Dungeons & Dragons. So it seems only fitting that I should round off the year and I should round off our first Dragon December with none other than Tiamat. Something that so many of you have requested to see, and I've been really excited to draw. Now in this video series, I like to use suggestions that you leave me down in the comment section below of monsters that you'd like to see me draw, and even though it's Dragon December, this week's video is no different. Tiamat was actually first suggested by someone whose name is really frustrating to read aloud. They are Asaka616, ASAKA616, so thank you so much for requesting to see Tiamat and giving me the chance to draw this creature in all of its infernal splendour. But what or who is Tiamat? Well, Tiamat is the god queen of the chromatic dragons and was introduced into Dungeons & Dragons through the 1975 Greyhawk supplement as an absolutely enormous dragon, the largest of them all, with as many heads as there are chromatic dragons. She is said to be their master, their deity, and also the creator of the chromatic dragons. And as such, she embodies all the flaws and vices that each of them possess. Her hubris and self-adoration is said to be as mighty as her destructive potential, as she possesses all of the strengths of each of her many children as well. Tiamat, however, is not just a dragon, or at least not an ordinary dragon. Her real-world counterpart, the mythology that inspired Tiamat the dragon, the being who shares her name, was also a primordial goddess in ancient Babylonian mythology, where she was a goddess of the sea, and her partner, Abzu, was a god of fresh water. Through their union, they created the cosmos and the younger gods, where Abzu represented order of, let's say, a flowing stream, which moves in one direction. Tiamat, described as the shining or glistening one, represents the more sort of tumultuous chaos required for creation, the churning open ocean. The sea representing chaos would become an image so ingrained in our psychology that it would appear in countless works of literature thereafter. But also, the sea holds many mysterious creatures, deadly and terrifying. As I mentioned before in the Chromatic Dragon video, sea serpents, the Leviathan and so on, are likely tied to the origins of modern conceptions of dragons, and so too is Tiamat. She's always identified as a sea serpent or some sort of bizarre dragon in Babylonian mythology, often scaled and feathered, but noticeably with only one head. Her name likely traces its roots to Tamtu, the ancient Akkadian word for the sea, a word which was spoken in Mesopotamia in the 3rd century BCE. In the Babylonian creation legend, known as the Enuma Elish, she's described as having a tail, an udder, and various other comparatively ordinary things, like at least one thigh, some ribs, a neck, a skull, eyes, blood, lips, entrails, and a heart, which is either way too thorough a description or implies that this was very unusual for Babylonian gods. Her chaotic nature saw her produce all manner of horrific creatures, including dragons, scorpion men, merfolk, and other scaly creatures. Although she's represented as a villainous figure, she's also seen as a necessary evil, said to be what's known as the Umu Hubur, the one who formed all things. Her villain status seems to come from an ancient legend, wherein a mischief and wisdom god called Enki discovered that Apsu, Tiamat's far more orderly, river-based companion, had plans to murder the younger gods, because they were seen to create too much chaos and noise for him to reorient into order. As a result, Enki then slew Apsu, but Kingu, a god of unskilled labour, apparently, told Tiamat and asked for help. Enraged at Enki for killing her partner, Tiamat created 11 terrible monsters to avenge Apsu, which included the likes of Asumgalu, the great dragon, Basmu, the venomous snake, Musmahu, the exalted serpent, and Mushusu, the furious snake, alongside other things that sound very like dragons to me. And these creatures would go to war with the gods and finish Tiamat's partner's plan. Finally, she took Kingu as her new lover, which is messed up in all kinds of ways because he was actually her son, but there's a lot of that in ancient mythology, and gave him what's called the Tablet of Destinies, which briefly made him the ruler of the entire universe before it was stolen by Annezu, the monster, allowing him to be slain by Marduk, the calf of the sun, and Anu, the personification of the sky, who peppered them both with arrows forged from the sky and the stars, and finally finished Tiamat off with an invincible spear, cutting her to pieces and forging the vault of heaven from her ribs. Her tear-filled eyes became the great rivers, Tigris and Euphrates, and her tail became the Milky Way. Her in-game mythology is just as full of strife and just as fascinating, although extremely different. She and her brother Bahamut, god of the metallic dragons, and almost certainly a topic for next year's Dragon December, have a mystifying and complicated backstory, or multiple origin stories, I guess. But the general consensus is that they were created at the same time as all other dragon gods. Tiamat is therefore one of the children of Asgarath, the World Shaper, a primordial god who's said to have only taken form once during the crafting of all dragon kind, but whose presence can be felt by all those connected to dragons. Again, maybe another Dragon December episode? Tiamat is equal parts dragon, god, and fiend, or rather an archfiend, who has the power to produce even more chromatic dragons, although her actual stat block simply calls her a fiend. Dwelling in the second layer of the Nine Hells, known as Dis, she guards its main gate while she wages an endless war against her brother and the forces of good. She's bound to that realm under the watchful eye of its master, Asmodeus, who keeps her there, but her triple-faceted nature, as a goddess and a dragon, means that she's not simply limited to creating avatars like most devils who need to use this opportunity in order to have any impact on the material plane. Tiamat's worshippers are capable of creating an artifact known as the Mask of the Dragon Queen that could bring her and her temple in Avernus to the material plane, freeing her from her enslavement as an archfiend in Asmodeus' service. But in terms of how she actually acts in-game, she's easily got to be one of the most powerful creatures that I've ever seen. Bearing in mind that other archfiends that we've uncovered in previous Monster Mondays have been things like challenge rating 24 or 25, Tiamat rocks up to the battlefield with a whopping challenge rating 30, something that is absolutely deserved. She's a gargantuan fiend, according to her stats, who flies at 120 feet, or can gallop at 60 feet on land, with a simply disturbing 30 d20 plus 300 HP and 25 natural armor class. Her lowest stat is a 10 in dexterity. As a goddess, this is kind of to be expected, but she has 30 strength, 30 constitution, 26 intelligence, 26 wisdom, and 28 charisma. She has a plus 17 in arcana, plus 26 in perception, and her religion stat is a plus 17 because she is a figure of religion, so I guess she's very attuned to that. She's immune to acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison damage, and all forms of non-magical attacks, and she's immune to being blinded, charmed, deafened, frightened, poisoned, or stunned. She has dark vision up to 240 feet, and true sight up to 120 feet, and she speaks common, draconic, and infernal. Just like most demonic entities, she has a rule called discorporeation, which means that if she technically dies, her soul merely travels back to the 9 hells, where it takes some time for her to regrow a new form, but essentially making her utterly unkillable. She has the fairly standard legendary resistance, allowing her to choose to succeed a saving throw that she's failed. But unlike most creatures who have 3 opportunities to do this per day, Tiamat has 5, a bit like the Rakshasa that I mentioned probably a couple of years ago now. Tiamat has something called limited magic immunity, which means unless she wishes to be affected by a certain type of spell, no spell of 6th level or lower can affect her unless she chooses, and she even has advantage on spell saving throws against other types of spells and magical effects that aren't within that bracket. Just like a troll, she regenerates 30 HP at the start of her turn, and I was surprised to learn that her innate spellcasting ability of being a massive dragon, allowing her to use her charisma, only lets her cast 1 spell, which is Divine Word, but she can do it 3 times a day. Divine Word is a 7th level evocation spell that means that anyone that can hear you when you utter such a word, if they fail a charisma saving throw, is affected by one of the following options. If the creature has 50 HP or fewer, it's deafened for a minute, i.e. the rest of combat. If it has 40 HP or fewer, it's deafened and blinded. If it has 30 HP or less, it's blinded, deafened, and stunned for an hour. Or if you have 20 HP or less, all creatures that fail their constitution saving throw are killed instantly. So it doesn't really matter that it only has 1 spell, because it has an instant killing spell. Additionally, Tiamat is famous for having 1 head for each chromatic dragon, and she has a rule to that effect, unsurprisingly known as multiple heads. It states, rather terrifyingly, that Tiamat can take 1 reaction per turn, rather than only 1 per round. She also has advantage on saving throws against being knocked unconscious. If she fails a saving throw against an effect that would stun a creature, 1 of her unspent legendary actions is spent. And she has so many legendary actions. As per a lot of massive dragons, she has an ability called Frightful Presence, wherein creatures within 240 feet of Tiamat need to succeed on a wisdom saving throw or become frightened for 1 minute. Pretty standard. And she has a claw and a tail attack. Her claw attack does 46 plus 10 damage, and her tail does 48 plus 10 piercing damage. What's really terrifying though is that her multi-attack allows her to use Frightful Presence and then make 3 attacks, 2 with her claws and 1 with her tail, which is just getting to be a pretty silly amount of damage every turn. Now Tiamat's bizarre 5-headed appearance really sort of takes form in her legendary actions. Again, most creatures, if they have legendary actions, only have 3 at a time. For those of you unaware, legendary actions are things that legendary creatures can do at the end of another creature's turn. They usually have 3 of them, and their legendary actions cost a certain number of these points. Those points are then refunded at the beginning of their turn, their round. But with 5, she is unsettlingly potent. Firstly, she has a bite attack, which is a plus 19 to hit, reaches 20 feet, and hits 1 target for 4d10 plus 10 slashing damage, plus an additional 14 damage rounded down, or 4d6 damage, of any chromatic type, whichever particular head happens to be biting someone at the time. So you have things like acid damage if it's the black dragon head, lightning damage if it's the blue, poison damage if it's the green, fire damage if it's the red, and so on. All of her breath attacks cost 2 of her legendary actions, but unlike most dragons who have a recharge timer, i.e. they can breathe their breath attack and then they have to roll a d6 at the start of their turn every turn, and if it lands on a 5 or a 6, they can then charge up their breath attack and use it again. Tiamat, however, if she wants to, could do 2 breath attacks every single turn on somebody else's turn of her choice. She doesn't need to recharge because she has so many crazy breath weapons, but they cost 2 of her 5 actions, and they operate exactly as the massive gargantuan ancient chromatic versions of each of her dragon heads would allow. A black dragon head releases a 15d8 acid damage line. The blue dragon releases a line of lightning dealing 16d10. The red head deals 26d6 fire damage in a 90-foot cone, and so on. Really, I can't imagine a creature that is more powerful than Tiamat in-game. If there is such a thing, please let me know, but to be honest, I can't imagine any party that I've ever been a part of, or any party that I have assembled as a DM, managing to survive an encounter with Tiamat. And that's kind of the point, I guess. She is a goddess that if you choose to fight her, you can fight. She has a material form. And she's kind of the big bad of D&D. The old 80s Dungeons & Dragons cartoon, for example, which was framed very much like a normal sort of Saturday morning cartoon, had her as the main adversary, the Skeletor to He-Man's He-Man, and so on. She actually appeared even in the first episode, which is rather a terrifying encounter for people who are supposedly first-level adventurers. Which reminds me that we are only first-level adventurers ourselves, but with your kind support and help, we are starting to level up. I mentioned earlier that I take suggestions from your comments that you leave down below about monsters that you'd like to see in my Monster Monday series. And I take absolutely every single suggestion that you can imagine, and I add it to my to-draw list. And that to-draw list is something that I give over to my patrons over on Patreon. Every single month, they take a look at this list, and they vote on which ones are their favourites, which ones they'd most like to see, and they essentially pick the order in which I draw all of these monsters for you guys. So if that sounds like fun to you, if that sounds like something you'd like to do, you'd like to have more control over the types of videos that I make here, then I'd urge you to head over to Patreon, because your support really helps me to make these videos every single week. It's an absolute dream for me to do, so I really appreciate your help in that way. It's a nice little personal community that we're building over there as well, so it'd be nice to see you guys over there. And there are lots of different reward levels as well. Everybody, whether they tip me the price of a cup of tea every single month, or all the way up to the higher levels, get an equal chance to vote on this to-draw list order. But if you choose to help fund the channel more and more, there are even more rewards for your help and support. As a thank you from me, some people get their names added to the end of the credits on each of my videos. Some of you get copies of every single illustration that I do each month. Just like right now, people who back me this month will get all of the Dragon December, every single dragon that I draw, including this one, as a digital print. But there are also private live streams and one-on-one chats as well, where I can do all sorts of things like drawing for you, talking through character ideas and world-building ideas, or just chilling out and chatting. So thank you so much if you choose to go and look at Patreon and help support the channel so that we can level up and grow this little community together. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that Tiamat looks very different here to how she usually does in monster manuals and, artwork depicting her. I'm really not a fan of the kind of Frankenstein's monster style stitched together, multiple coloured creatures. I like my creatures to be very cohesive, and it's very important that Tiamat represents all of her chromatic parts, basically. I totally get why Tiamat looks the way she does. She's a terrifying, massive dragon with one head of each of her colours of her offspring. Absolutely get that. That definitely needed to be represented in my drawing. But yeah, I really like the idea of this terrifying, powerful dragon, loads and loads of heads. Great. Good start. But I'm not a fan of all the colour clashing. So I had to think about how I would want to represent her. And the idea of prisms came to mind. She is the ultimate chromatic dragon, from which all colourful dragons have split and divided from her. So I thought if she was like a beam of white light hitting a prism and that light refracting into all of her many colours, this would be a really interesting way to represent her and keep her nice and cohesive. So I've kind of dressed her in scales and armour of white. She has this kind of pyramid, this prism in her chest, from which all of her multiple coloured heads spring from. But I also wanted to represent that, yes, she is a chromatic dragon. So I've decided to give her these kind of wings, a bit like I did with some of my fiends, where they're kind of made of like boiling energy or, semi-transparent light, but they also have this gradient of colour. So yes, she's a chromatic dragon, she's not just a white dragon, she has these kind of colourful chromatic wings, but also she's a queen, she's super prideful, she is like pride made manifest. So I wanted her to be draped in gold and jewels and offerings from all the many people who might worship her. So she was absolutely tons and tons of fun to draw. This is easily the largest drawing that my computer has ever had to deal with, and it was really suffering throughout the whole process. This is probably the drawing that I spent longest on. Usually my drawings tend to take me about 8 hours, but this one was easily 16, just because there were so many finicky little details to do and so many intricate dragon heads to draw and things like that. But I'm really proud of this one, and I really enjoyed drawing Tiamat. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video as well. I hope you enjoyed tuning in to watch Dragon December. If you did, please make sure to leave a little like, a little thumbs up down below, and let YouTube know if I'm doing a good job. If you particularly love this video and you'd like to come back and take a look again, make sure to favourite this video or share it with some communities that you're part of. Share it with your D&D group, just in case you think your DM is going to throw the nightmare that is Tiamat at you, so that you can prepare and maybe try and make an invincible character. I don't know. I wouldn't want to fight her. But everything that you can do like that, getting the word out that this channel exists, and letting YouTube know that you enjoy it, really helps this channel to grow, really helps to support the channel, and it's absolutely made my year that you guys have tuned in and watched all of my videos with me. It's been so much fun. I've absolutely adored this. So thank you so much for being part of the Arcane Forge community, and for making your suggestions and making me feel welcome here on YouTube. Now this is the last video that I'm going to be doing this year. I'm a hugely festive person. I really love Christmas. So I am going to be taking some time off now and just enjoying myself, which means that there might be a little bit of a break before you next see a video. I'm hoping that there will be some content for you in January, but it'll probably be towards the end of January, just because these videos take a long time to prep and upload. But by that time, it'll be a new year. It'll be 2020, double crit year, so we'll need to do something special for it for sure. So I hope you'll join me in January. Worst case scenario, it'll be February, but I reckon it'll be towards the end of January. So until I next see you, I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season, whatever holiday you practice, if you practice any at all. From me, it'll be a Merry Christmas, and I hope you all have a wonderful New Year as well. So until January, happy monster hunting, and good luck on your adventures until I see you next time.